Cool. Kevin, looks like we're live. So I'm excited. We're live. This will also go on the podcast, but just to give a formal introduction to Kevin and myself, Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com. I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Some you've heard of, some you've never heard of. P90X founder Tony Horton. Kevin, when I talk about this, I like talking about some of the challenges and low moments because we've all had those on our journey, and it makes us real. And he talked about when he was, he's obviously sold hundreds of millions of dollars of P90X, but he was a street mime. So he made money, food and rent money, by putting his hat on the street and being a street performer. I had a guy, Weisz, who is the founding engineer at Mobileye, which basically fuels the autonomous vehicle. And they sold their company to Intel for $13.2 billion. But what struck me was he had to go back, he had to keep taking pay cuts, because they were working really long hours for little pay. And he had to go back to his wife and kids and basically say, hey, all extracurriculars done. No more eating out, no more niceties. Like, we can't afford it. And basically had to pull them out of all their extracurriculars because of the grind that it took to get there. You know what I mean? So check out that, many more at InspiredInsider.com. I really like talking about the true to life stories along the journey. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. I co-founded with my business partner, John Corcoran, who Kevin also knows. And we help B2B businesses connect their Dream 100 clients. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. And we want to make sure that the podcast has amazing content, but it also helps you generate ROI. And the ROI is from relationships. And there's no better perfect guest from today to talk about relationships than Kevin Thompson. When I think of relationships, he's like the top 3 people that enter into my mind. Beyond just relationships with podcasting, I consider it leaving a legacy for my guests, for myself and my guests. And you could check out the About page on InspiredInsider.com. There's an interview with my grandfather who was a Holocaust survivor. And he talks about surviving Nazi Germany. And that legacy lives on because of the interview the Holocaust Foundation did with them. So we have been doing this for over 10 years. If you have questions, feel free to email us at support@rise25media.com or go to rise25.com. So Kevin, I am super excited to chat with you. It's funny. I'm gonna give a formal intro to Kevin in a second if you don't know him, which you should. I had an interview earlier today with a man by the name of Steve Adams. Okay. Steve Adams runs TigerNeuro.com. And I was like, Steve, what's going on? He's like, I just got off of a 2-hour Zoom call. I go, what were you doing on a 2-hour Zoom call? And he goes, I was with this group called Tribe for Leaders. And people can check out tribeforleaders.com if it's under, they're revamping it. So, but you should go there anyways. I'm sure by the time you visit it, it'll be there. And I go, I know Tribe for Leaders. And he's like, yeah, Kevin Thompson runs it. I'm like, Kevin's the best. And he's like, it's this amazing group where like-minded founders, entrepreneurs get on, they share, they help each other. And then the group kind of rotates every so often. So you get to meet more people and push through different challenges, opportunities, meet more people as far as opportunities go, strategic partnerships. So it was just funny. That was the timing. And also Eric Duay the other day, I was talking to him and he's like, Kevin's the best. You need to have Kevin on the show. I'm like, I already have him on the show. He's coming on the show. Okay. And Eric runs Fair Merchant Solutions, he helps high-risk industries like hotel, travel, many other different industries with payment processing, grocery, you name it. So Kevin is one of the biggest givers I know. He is an expert, in my opinion, at what is the most important aspect of life and business, which is relationships. He creates profitable win-win relationships in a number of ways. And we'll hear about his methodology, his strategy, what he does. He's gone from being in the Army to, if you picture the deadliest catch, he was there. Deadliest catch fisherman, crazy stories there, to carpet cleaner, to online marketer, to, I call you, Kevin, strategic relationship business builder. That's what I just call you in my mind. You can check out tribeforleaders.com. So Lee Richter, I'll just highlight that. She just said Rockstar Connectors. So Kevin, thank you for joining me. This is a long time coming.
Yeah, man, Jeremy, man, my pleasure. I mean, this is cool because it's been a while since you and I have seen each other, and it's just cool to be back together, just having a conversation, man.
Yeah. You know, when I was talking to Steve Adams, I was like, you know, we aren't living in the same city, but whenever he comes to Chicago, we definitely go to dinner and love hanging out. I would love to start off just hearing we'll talk about the journey and some of your amazing stories, but strategic partnering, your philosophy, methodology around strategic partnering.
You know, here's the thing. So many people, so many entrepreneurs like view strategic partnering. You know, you get people reaching out to you all the time, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where they're like, "Hey, you know, we should do this thing together, and you know, if you help me out, I'll share revenue with you, or you know, we can make all this money together." And I've been approached with that message so many times over the years, and it just kind of falls on deaf ears. And you know what's most important is the relationship, like you said, you know, and there's, you know, my friend Travis talks about the different kinds of relationship capital, or the different types of capital, excuse me, and he uses TIMER as an acronym for that, and it's, you know, time, identity, money, energy, and reputation, or also, you know, also relationships. And usually when we're looking at strategic partnering, we need to look at how can we help further our partner's relationship with their audience, with their followers, with their, you know, sphere of influence, their, you know, whoever that is. And when we come from that standpoint of just being of service, that's when we get cooperation. And once we've got somebody's attention, now it is upon us to give them a great experience in partnering with us from beginning to end. And that does not always include how much money we're going to make together. And so, you know, it's all about treating people the way that we would want to be treated. And it's really, Jeremy, it's that simple. It's that simple.
You know, you're talking about being of service. I've never seen someone who does such a high touch, you know, introduction, strategic partnership, meaning when you introduce people, you follow up. You know, you're just like, okay, go at it. You have a way of, I want you to maybe talk a little about that. You actually follow up with people and you see how it's going. Talk a little about the follow. I mean, not only are you introducing, but there's a follow-up process to that.
Well, you know, because it's frustrating when you see something of like you want to connect to people because you see something there, and then if they don't have that conversation, or if, like, you know, they just, entrepreneurs, let's face it, we're all busy, and if it doesn't get followed up on, and those people that you're trying to connect don't get to actually talk and have a conversation, I'm like, wait a minute, you guys need to like have this conversation. I introduced you for a reason, and so right, let's make sure you guys get to talk and explore this. And you know, and really, I mean, I guess the same thing. It comes down to, because I care about both of those two parties, right, and I want to see at least bare minimum, if nothing ultimately does end up coming from it, I at least want them to connect, because I know that they're going to have a great conversation and a new relationship will be formed. So.
Yeah. I don't know if I would say you care more than them, but sometimes they don't realize how impactful that can be. So you sometimes have to care a little bit more in the beginning to make sure that, you know, follows through, right? Yeah. There's two stories that are really interesting when it comes to strategic partnerships with you. And maybe start with the first one with Joe Polish.
Okay. Yeah. You know, Joe, I mean, without even, I mean, like, this was before I knew even what strategic partnering was, and Joe and I did form a partnership together, but at the time we were doing it, I had no idea what was going on, or that that's even what we were doing. This would have been back in 2003. You know, I was friends with Joe because at the time I owned a cleaning and restoration business, and I met Joe in 1997. And my business at the time was, I mean, lack of a better word, Jeremy, it kind of sucked. I didn't know the first thing about business, didn't know the first thing about marketing, and I found Joe in a trade publication, and I started using his materials to just completely revamp and just transform that business over the next few years into a buy referral only company. And I had also started this website, this ugly little website called Get Mold Solutions. And that website had got up to about producing between 12 to 13,000 a month on autopilot. So it was a nice little addition to the business. And Joe and I were having a conversation in early '03, and he's like, hey, why don't you come down here to the annual event and show everybody what you're doing with your website? And I'm like, all right, that sounds cool. And he did this annual event every year for the cleaning and restoration industry, and about 400 or 500 people would be there at that. And so when I agreed to that, he's like, Kevin, be sure to document, what you do and how you do what you do with that website, because when you share, a certain percentage of the people in the audience, they're going to want ongoing help from you, and make sure you are prepared to give that to them. So I did that. And, it took me about 3 months to put something together. That became the very first version of a product that became known as the automatic income system. And I had called Joe's office the week before to get a hold of his secretary, Eunice, because I was like, I don't even know how this stuff works. And I just told her, I said, Eunice, I said, Joe's got me speaking here at the event next week. And he asked me to prepare a presentation as well as put a product together, which I've done that. And I'm ready to go. But I said, I don't even know how this works. And Eunice is like, well, typically because Joe has invested all the time and finances in putting the event together and getting people there. Typically, if somebody speaks, they do a share of the revenue. They just share it with Joe. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And so she walked me through how that worked. And I'm like, all right. And so I ended up speaking at that event. And that was my first time ever, Jeremy, speaking on a big stage. Mm-hmm. And actually, right before I took the stage, I'll tell you, I was a nervous wreck. Because I had all these things going through my mind, like, man, can you really do this? Or do you really have value to offer for these people? Oh man, don't let Joe down. Joe's your friend. Don't let him down. All of that kind of stuff. But once I got on stage and Joe gave me this great introduction, and then I just started sharing, and just in a few minutes, people were engaged, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And so I just shared, and when we were done, I just about 50 minutes later, I just said, hey, if this resonated with you, if what I shared here makes sense, if you'd like to have my ongoing help, this is what it looks like. This is what the investment is. And, if you want that, then go ahead and go to the back of the room. And we made $35,000 in sales of that product at that event. And that, Jeremy, I'll tell you what, that was a whole lot more than I made running the cleaning and restoration business for a day's work, and that was an epiphany there. But looking back on that, I didn't even realize, hindsight's 2020, that Joe and I had formed a strategic partnership. He saw that I had something of value to offer his people at that event. We did not have one single comment. Joe and I, we never said one word about, he never even told me how it worked or anything. There was not even a conversation around, oh, we're going to make all this money. None of that took place. It was just, he was like, why don't you come
delivering value? You deliver value. He delivers value to his audience through what you will deliver value with by helping them and giving them new ideas and new things that they can do to help their business.
Yes. And yet, looking back, that was just such a valuable lesson and valuable experience going through that. And that ended up launching a new business for me that we started running with. I started running advertising for it, and did, that's a whole nother story. But long story short, the following year, April 14th of 2007, we sold the cleaning and restoration business, and I moved into this new business. It just was basically launched at Joe's event.
Yeah.
And,
I want to talk about Joe Polish's, what some of the lessons you learned, some of the influence, but talk about a low point in the carpet cleaning restoration business. that just to give people a sense of what you were working with and dealing with at the time?
Yeah. You know, I running that business, I ended up building a team of people. I had, guys that were out in the field doing cleaning work. I had an office gal, and we had, all this in place. And quite honestly, for me, and I was managing the whole thing. And a lot of times I was out in the field too. And even though like we with Joe's help had got to about probably top 3% of cleaning restoration people in the industry as far as size of business, that I had and revenue being created thanks to Joe's help. But yet here I still was. I was working, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. I was doing that 6 and 7 days a week. And for me, I remember sitting in my office one day on a Sunday and thinking to myself, what in the hell am I doing here? Because this is not the lifestyle that I want for myself. My family, they don't deserve this. I should be home with my family right now, not here at work. And for the first time ever, I took out a piece of paper and I just started writing, well, what the heck do you even want? What do you really even want for yourself? And for me personally, I wanted to be able to have, time off on weekends to spend with my family. I wanted to be able, because at that time, business was, and business consumed my mind all the time. I never shut down from it. 24/7. I mean, from the time I got up to the time I went to bed, I was thinking business. And even if I was in conversations with other people, I'm like not engaged because I'm thinking about, even if I'm taking time off, I'm thinking like, dang, you got all this stuff that needs to be done in the business. And when I'm at work, I'm thinking, man, you should be spending more time with your family and the people that you say you care about,
Yeah.
So you got all this constant push and pull going on. And
what else did you write down? So you wrote down no weekends. I don't want weekends. What else did you want at the time?
Weekends off. I wanted a business that actually excited me. Now there were aspects of that cleaning and restoration business that I liked, but there was a bunch of it that I just didn't like at all. and I wanted to have a business that I'd like to say that I got into that business for some grandiose reasons, but it was just because I knew a guy in Seattle that was in that industry and he was doing okay. And I was like, well, if he can do it, so can I. That was my whole motivation for starting that business. And I wanted to have a business that actually inspired me, that had me excited to get up and do what I do every day. I wanted time off from my family. I wanted to be able to make $1 million in my business. I mean, at that time, $1 million seemed like, and then, what, interesting, Jeremy, that became the goal for a long time until we hit it. That was the goal. And I remember the first year we hit it in 2008, I was like, wow, we actually did it, and it was such an exciting time. And I was like, wow. But yeah, that was one of my things. I wanted to be able to make $1 million a year in my business. And so those were some of the biggies that I wrote down. And, I want to work with inspiring people. I want to work with people that, inspire me. And like, for me, that's entrepreneurs. I love talking with entrepreneurs, hanging out with entrepreneurs and sharing with them and learning from them. And hopefully me being able to provide insight and perspective for them as well. So.
Yeah, I know a lot of the values that you wrote down were around the family and wanting to be with them, not working the long hours, not being on the weekends. What else as far as, the lessons you've learned? You started off in the Joe Polish world in the cleaning restoration and then carried through to today. What are some of maybe some top lessons or things that you've gleaned over the years?
So we're talking about Joe Polish. I am, I met Joe in '97, and him and I are still friends to this day. He was my introduction to direct response marketing. In 2008, or was that a year? That was 2007 was when he started Genius Network. And in 2008, I joined it, and so I've been in that group for a long time. And we talk about Joe. I mean, he is one of the really long-term relationships that I've had in my life. As far as an entrepreneur, he is the longest standing relationship. And yet we're just as close today as we always have been. And, like you alluded to, relationships. I mean, people play it a lot of lip service that relationships are important, but a lot of times their actions show otherwise. But yet relationships are the most valuable asset that we have in our business. I personally even place them. I mean, there is no more valuable asset than the relationships we have, whether it's with other entrepreneurs, whether it's with our clients, with our prospects, with our team, with our vendors, with whoever that is. Relationships in our life are the most valuable asset that we possess.
Mm-hmm. And I know your philosophy on it is it just deliver as much value as humanly possible.
Exactly. Exactly. And treat people the way that we would want to be treated.
One thing that always strikes me every time I talk to you, Kevin, that it reminds me, even telling that story about the strategic partnership story with Joe Polish,
Mm-hmm.
You're amazing at putting your ego aside and asking for help. Okay. I don't know if you realize that, but it's true. Like when you approached Eunice and you said, I'm not exactly sure how this works. What do I do here? Most people may not do that. Maybe not most people, but some people may not do that. Right. And you kind of just listen, I just want to get this right. And you just come and ask for help. Okay. And don't pretend you know it all. And I found that to be super valuable for myself. And whenever I talk to you, you just bring up a story that always bring up a story like, hey, like I'm not sure, and you just ask a question. And some people don't want to ask because they want to feel like people, they know it all or whatever the case is. I don't know if there's a way that you can put that aside and use a way that you can come with your heart in your hand and just ask for help. Is that something you've always done, or is that?
No. And what's interesting is you bring that up about that conversation with Eunice, and I didn't even view that particular instance as asking for help. I viewed as like, okay, Joe's given me the opportunity here. I want to make sure I get this right and do right by Joe.
Right.
And so, but no, for most of my life, Jeremy, I have totally sucked when it comes to asking for help from other people because I didn't want to bother or inconvenience people. And it wasn't really until I was having a conversation with a good friend and a mentor of mine, Jesse Elder, and this took place in 2012, where we really started digging into this. And he starts asking me, he said, Kevin, when you give to somebody else and when you help somebody else who really appreciates it, how does that make you feel? And I was like, you know what, Jess? I was like, there's no better feeling in the world than that. I was like, I love the feeling that I have when I do for somebody else that really appreciates that. And he's like, because he knew that, like, because that's how I was. I loved giving to others and I loved helping other people, but I was not so good at receiving help from other people, or God forbid, asking other people for help when I needed it. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of pointed out, he's like, Kevin, he's like, do you realize that by you being this way, you're depriving other people from the feeling that you just told me was the best experience in the whole world? He said, you're depriving them from having that experience. He's like, who are you to do that to them? And I'm just like, wow, I never, ever thought about it that way before. And
sometimes the biggest givers are the worst receivers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that is, I mean, I've talked with a number of people about that. I've given, I've shared presentations on the topic of giving and receiving and why it's not better to give than to receive. And like that is a big issue for a lot of people, not just entrepreneurs, but I mean, definitely entrepreneurs too. Most of them are far better at giving than they are at receiving or asking, proactively asking for help, for sure. Yeah.
So how do you become a better receiver? I mean, you gave a perfect analogy, by the way. You talked about it in the sense of breathing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, once I came to the realization, thanks to Jesse, I was like, you know what? He's right. I am depriving other people of having this experience, and I know how much I love having it. I was like, so let me just start exercising this a little bit. Let me just start, letting, when somebody wants to do something for me, or ask me, hey, Kev, what can I do to help you? Don't just say, no, I'm good. You don't need to do anything. And even if I can't come up with a good answer now, which that happens, somebody will ask me, hey, Kev, what can I do to help you? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know right now. I don't know what to answer right now. Is it all right with you if I just circle back around with you when I have a good answer? And nobody says no to that. And it still lets them have the feeling of like, yeah, you know what? I mean, he accepted my offer. He might not have a good answer, but he's open to that. And it still lets them have that same feeling. And then when people do want to give and they do want to help me, I'd be accepting of that. And I just, instead of saying, no, you don't have to do that, I just say, you know what? Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And just let them have the experience. And the other big thing for me is I've been really, for the last several years, just really been flexing my muscles and just like exercising when it comes to asking for help from others proactively, because I do know that, us who are givers, which so many entrepreneurs are, the people around us, people in our lives, they know who we are. They know that we're a giver. And so when we do go to ask for help from other people and we step out on a limb a little bit, get a little bit out of our comfort zone, have conversations with people and just say, you know what, I really could use some help with this. I'd like to talk with you about this. You know what, people know who we are. They already know that. We have been creating relationship capital for years. We are surrounded by people who love us, who want the best for us, who want to help us, who want to see us win. But you know what? Most of them don't know what to do because we haven't asked them for help. We haven't asked them for anything. And they'd love to help us. And that's been my experience when it comes to asking for help, is like, oh, Kev, yeah, man, I'd love to help you out. And so it's been a game changer, Jeremy. It's been a game changer.
You talked about it like breathing, and you said, try and just exhale and not inhale, or try and just inhale and not exhale. See how that works for you. And that really struck me as a great analogy.
And you know what? That Jesse said that to me. He's like, okay. Yeah, giving and receiving are like, it's like breathing. He's like, if I were to ask you, what do you prefer better, breathing in or breathing out? If you actually gave me an answer, I'd say, great. Try doing only that for a while and see how far it gets you. Because you got to do both. And giving and receiving are the same way. You got to do both.
Yeah. So one way people can help you, you'll let me know, but they should check out Tribe for Leaders. They can email you, put you on, message you on Facebook. Talk a little bit about Tribe for Leaders, what it is.
Yeah, so Tribe for Leaders, what it is, I just with me, having all this experience with giving and receiving now, and then having more recently been on the receiving end in such a powerful way, I wanted more people to experience this. And I started hosting these live events a couple of years ago, back in 2017. And a close friend of mine had suggested, Kevin, why have you never held an in-person get-together for a bunch of your cool entrepreneur friends? I'm like, I don't know. I've never thought of that. And he's like, well, you should, because if you did, I'd want to come. And so I just started reaching out. I mean, that got me really jazzed. And I'm like, because that was like, for me, Jeremy, that was like, the thought of it was like throwing a party for a bunch of cool friends, and I actually hosted those first two events right here at my home. And so the first 6 people I reached out to, I was 6 for 6, that they all were like, Kev, if you do that, I will be there for it. And these were it was people like, excuse me, it was the people like Travis Sago, Garrett Gunderson, Ryan Chapman, I don't know if these names mean anything to anybody else, but Jesse Elder. In fact, Jesse Elder was number 6, and he starts asking me, he's like, well, Kev, when are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't even set dates. I'm just giving an idea by a few people to see if there's interest. And he's like, well, you got to set some dates. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I'll do that. And he's like, nope. He's like, right now, while we're talking on the phone, set dates. And I'm like, all right. So we set dates, and he's like, okay. He's like, now set another set of dates a month later. I'm like, why is that? He's like, well, Kevin, you're only like looking 15 people because, you know, you only got so much room in your home. You're going to fill this thing up. He's like, set another set of dates and give people 2 options. And that was a good move on his part, because we filled both of them up. We had 15 people at each event. And I knew, Jeremy, I mean, well, I'm sure that I talked to you in that time frame and would have invited you. I had lots of people that I invited that couldn't make the dates. But what I envisioned for this was, you know, the people I were inviting was all well-established entrepreneurs who had already successful businesses, who had a track record of getting great results for their clients, had a good reputation, all of that stuff. But on the other side of the coin, they were also these just amazingly giving and generous, lead with a helping hand people of integrity on the planet that I knew. And I, even though I could not articulate to anybody what would happen, because I'd never done this before, I just knew that when you get people who are that way, entrepreneurs who are that way, who have that expertise, who have that experience, who have years of resources, who have years of connections that they already have through their business, and they are also people who just want to give, who just want to help, who want to see other people win. When you get them together in a space, that magic will happen. And it did. It happened. And so we went on to host 10 of those events over the last couple of years. And then when COVID kicked up, I was like, we had an event scheduled for March. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to happen. And I'm like, what are you going to do now? And so I was like, well, you know what? I still want to start helping, still want to help people in this way. So we switched over to using Zoom. And somebody was like, Kevin, if you can't do live events, if you can't get us together on live events, you got to do it virtually, because we still want to like hook up like this. And so that's when we created Tribe for Leaders. And what this has always been, and what my vision was always was for this thing, was that when you get these entrepreneurs together like this in this space, that they're all there to help each other. That they're not, I mean, yes, they have things that they need and that they want to, but they all come from this place of service, wanting to help, wanting to give. I mean, and what happens is like they're all trying to outgive and out-help each other. And so in return, they're all getting exactly what they need as well. And I want to be careful with my language, because I used to say, well, I'm just the guy who provides the space for them. But now I'm the guy who provides the space for them to do that. And that's my role in that.
So what's the format? How often do people meet? How does it work?
So we have multiple groups. We're looking right now. We only launched this thing a month and a half ago, and our goal was to get to 50 members in the group and cap it. And it's actually going to be about 50, 55. Right now, we're at, like, as of today, well, not counting this afternoon, but right now, 23. So I would imagine the way things are going now, and like you mentioned, Steve Adams. Well, people are talking, and like people are saying, well, the guy we're talking to today was like referred, and somebody told me, you need to talk with Kevin about being in this thing. And so I would imagine that within a month and a half or so, we're probably going to be full up. I don't know exactly what we're going to do at that point.
I mean, do you keep the groups a certain size, or how do you?
Yeah, so right now we have multiple groups inside, and so each we host a call for each group. So each group has 5 to 6 people in it, and then we host a Zoom call for them every month. And so right now we're hosting Zoom calls every week, and then that's steadily picking up as we add more people, add more groups, and then they're with the same group for the first quarter. So for the first 3 calls, they were with the same group. So that kind of starts creating a little bit of accountability. It creates, you get to kind of come back and say, okay, this is what we did, in the last 30 days, and they start getting to really know each other. And so then after the first quarter, now, because Jules and I are participating on every single call with all of these groups, well, we're like hearing what everybody's talking about, what they're looking for, what they're needing help with. And so we're able to start pulling from each group and say, oh, well, you need to connect with so-and-so. And so we're kind of playing matchmaker and all of that kind of stuff. And after the first quarter, we'll kind of like, look at it where everybody's, and they're going to change the seats, if you will. Now you're going to be in a new group for the next quarter, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're overseeing it all, so you get the insights, and you get you're a master. I mean, connector doesn't do it justice, but you're allowed to. You then can basically take people and start to introduce them to what the needs they can serve each other for, even if they're in different groups.
Exactly.
This is the way I explain it, Kevin. Okay. Someone's like, hey, should I join something Kevin's doing? It could be anything. I would first of all say yes, because of who you are. But second of all, they're like, well, what do I get? Or what happens? I go, listen, it's kind of like chocolate. It's like my daughters, if they haven't tried something. Do you like chocolate? Yes. Do you like peanut butter? Yes. We'll put them together. Do you like that? Yes. Okay. You're fine. Just go.
There you go.
Okay. Like, you take entrepreneurs. You like entrepreneurs? Yes. Do you like making connections with entrepreneurs? Yes. Something good will come out of it if you put the two together. And that's kind of what you do. You don't necessarily have an expected outcome. You just know when you put this in a bowl, something good will come out of it.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Accurate. Yeah. And like, just this morning we had a Tribe for Leaders call, and one of the guys just did a kind of like a small one of these 5-day challenges, just had some great results with it. And now he's got this thing all systematized, and he's talking about, he's like, you know what, I was so excited about what happened, the results that we got for people, and the results they got. I want to start doing this every quarter, and I want to start ramping. Well, one of the other guys was he's a media buyer. And he starts asking a few questions and like about this and that. And he's like, well, what if you did this? And now all of a sudden, the guy he's all like, he's like, you know what? He's like, we need to have a deeper conversation after this call, because I think you can help me grow this thing. And it's a whole lot bigger than I even imagined. And I'm starting to get the picture of that thanks to you. And when I see that kind of stuff happening, and I'm so stoked to see what the conversation is going to take place next month when we get back together with those people and stuff, because I know I know what happened in the last 30 days. I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next 30 days and stuff. And now I'm thinking about, because of these two guys, I'm thinking about people in the other groups, like, oh, well, you know what, you need to talk to so-and-so, and you need to talk to so-and-so. And so for me to play the matchmaker like that, I mean, that's the role that I love playing. I love playing that role. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing, Kevin, your mindset around being a giver, about it's not about what I can get. It's not about the money you can make. It's just about going in and delivering value. And also the flip side of what you said you've been terrible at, which is being a receiver, and some of the mindset that goes into that, which is, you're taking something really special away from the person if you're not receiving properly. There's also a really good example of strategic partnering with Mike Crow.
Oh yeah. Mike, he was my second ever strategic partnership. After I did that one with Joe in 2003, I took the presentation I did, and I started doing advertising and direct mail and all that, and we put it into a teleseminar model and started doing that. And it wasn't until 2007 when I was talking with my friend Mike Crow, who I met through Joe. I mean, I met a lot of people through Joe over the years. And we were just catching up, and I was telling him about this thing I'd been doing. And he was like, Kev, he's like, I think that my home inspectors would really get a ton of value for that. Why don't we do something together? And he's like, I'll put you in front of them. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And so we set a date. He promoted it to his group of home inspectors. I did a similar presentation as I did at Joe's live event for carpet cleaners. I did it for his home inspectors, and we just did it on a teleseminar. And when we were said and done, we had created about 48,000 in revenue in less than 24 hours doing that. And like no plane, no travel, no nothing, just talk on the phone for about 90 minutes. And I was just like, wow, that was really cool. And the thing is, I was so appreciative of Mike. I was just like, man, as that, you know what, this would have not happened if it weren't for Mike and him just having his role in it. And so I was like, you know what? I was like, I need to. I had told Mike, I was like, you know, hey, I will share a percentage of revenue that we create from this, and we had agreed on that. And I was like, you know what? If I was Mike, I'd appreciate getting the money quickly. And so we had offered the training on 3 installments of $397, and we had all these round of installments of $397 that come in. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to overnight Mike a check based on what's already come in, and you know, if we get returns or whatever, it'll factor out, and I'll take care of it in the second and third checks I'll be sending him in 30 and 60 days. So I overnighted him a check. And I just wrote a handwritten note, you know, hey, Mike, man, so appreciate you doing this. I'm really excited that we had such great results. And man, I'm looking forward to helping your people. And he calls me the next day. And he was like, Kevin, he said, I got to tell you, I have partnered with a lot of people over the years, and no one has ever overnighted me a check. And he said, I just want to let you know what impact that made on me. And I just made a note of that. I'm like, you know what? Overnight the check is apparently a good thing. I'm just going to keep on doing that. and so that just became part of my process. And like, you know, so I just had a conversation with Mike. I'm like, hey, I said, now that we've had this experience, do you know anybody else that I should be talking with? And he's like, yeah. He's like, absolutely. He's like, I want to connect you with some more people. And so we did that. And I started partnering with some of them too, not all of them, but some of them. And I told them, I said, you know what? I was like, you and I, we wouldn't even be talking if it weren't for Mike. And so I want to honor him in this too. I'd like to withhold a little bit. And when if we do this project together, I'm going to give Mike a little bit too. And people just were like, wow, you know, Kim, that's a really good idea. Yeah, we do need to honor Mike because, yeah, you're right. We wouldn't be talking if it weren't for him. And so I ended up just developing this process, and it was really nothing more than like what I mentioned before is it's how just treating people the way that we'd want to be treated.
Right.
And you know, I developed a process that just ended up, that's why I was able to do over 500 strategic partnerships in about a 9-10 year period. And we sold $16.1 million of that product and the training that went along with it, and hundreds of partners along the way. And, you know, I remember, you know, I remember being at an event one time, I think it was Yannick Silver's Underground, and had rented a Mike Filsame there and got to talking with him at the lounge. And he was like, you're the guy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're the guy I heard about. You're the guy that overnights the checks.
You're the guy. Yeah.
And, you know, and that's not a bad reputation to have. But, you know, it's not just about the money and the checks either. It's just, it's
the gesture.
How you treat people.
Yeah.
How you treat people.
You know, Kevin, I've been the subject of that. I remember I was in my office. I get this FedEx package envelope. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I have no idea what this is. I open, it's a handwritten note from you and a check. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I texted you, called you probably at the time and said, thank you. That's amazing. But your internal dialogue is what I really always love to hear. Is it's all delivering value, giving, you know, when you approach those partners, you could do something, but you talk about and use the words, we want to honor Mike. We want to honor that other person. And that's kind of the internal talk that you have about that person. And so how can you not go along with that?
Yeah.
You know, I want to go back a little bit in your journey. You know, it wasn't always, you know, the automatic income system or what you do now. You had to endure some true grit and hustle. And maybe that's understating it even, but there was a time, you know, that you had aspirations to go to college, and that got sidetracked. Yeah. So I wonder if you could just talk about that for a second.
Sure. When I was in high school, I was in FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, when I was in high school, and I had such a cool experience in that I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to college and I want to study business, because I that's what really got me going in the mind of like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And unfortunately, my dad, at the beginning of my 9th grade year, he got diagnosed with cancer, and at the end of my 10th grade year, he passed away.
Terrible.
And
I'm sorry.
So that was an experience in and of itself. Losing your dad at 16 years old is rough on a kid. But you know what? It's I had a lot of I cried a lot with him before he passed away. But once he finally passed away, because I watched him deteriorate so much in that year and a half, that it was like this burden, weight was lifted when he passed away, because it was like finally he's out of.
He was suffering.
Yeah. He was out of his pain, and but through that, my mom becoming now the sole income earner for our family, plans of going to college were off the table. She just wasn't going to be able to afford that, and so I ended up joining the military, joined the Army right out of high school, because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do or how I was going to make this happen or anything like that. And so I was like, well, you know what? My dad was in the Army. I'm going to join the Army, at least maybe, and get because you get a college money too when you join the Army. And I was like, that was kind of my motivation there. And so I spent 4
like
years,
the GI Bill, they can help fund it. Yeah.
Help pay for college. Yeah. When you get out. And so I was like, I'll do that. And after I get out of the 4 years in the military, come home in '87, and I'm like, really trying to figure out, what? I said, I don't know if college is the best option or not. And I said, I just need to get money together and start my own business. I'm talking with my best friend who I'd known since 1st grade, and it's like, man, I need to get money together. How the heck do I do this? And he's like, well, Kev, man, he's like, go down to Seattle. Get yourself a job on one of those fishing boats. Go to Alaska. Those guys, they make all kinds of money. I'm like, that sounds good. And so I did. I went down to Fisherman's Terminal, and I just started hitting the docks. And
where were you living at the time?
I live up in fact, you know what? I live about 5 miles today from where I grew up. I lived in Marysville. I live in Arlington now, about 40 miles north of Seattle.
Got it.
And so yeah, I just drove down to Seattle, went down to Fisherman's Terminal, started hitting the docks, and started talking about all these captains, and they're like, we don't do this. We don't hire off the dock, because you have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
You just walked up. You're like, all right, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I was like, hey, I'm ready to work, and I've heard, I want to go fishing in Alaska, and they're like, no way. And you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, and we don't hire this way. I mean, the way we hire is like from guys that already been on the boat, that have already told their friends what it's like, so they got a clue at least. You don't got a clue. But one guy was, John Waddell was his name. He's like, I might be a guy short, and he's like, he's like, give me your number. He's like, I ain't gonna promise nothing, but he's like, give me your number. He ended up calling me a couple of days later, and he was like, how fast can you be down here? I said, I could be there in 2 hours. He's like, okay, get your stuff packed and get down here. He's like, when you get here, come up and see me in the wheelhouse. And when
You've never done this before?
No. So I'd never done this before, and neither had John. John had never done this before. And he was just in a pinch, and he calls me up to the wheelhouse. He's like, look, Kevin, he's like, I'm going out on a major limb here. He's like, I have never done this before. And he's like, man, he's like, I'm just hoping you don't let me down, because he's like, if you get up there and you don't pull your weight, he's like, everybody else has got a cover for your ass. And he's like, and they're going to hate you by the time the trip is over. He's like, they got this bar up in Dutch Harbor. At the time, it was called, what the hell was the name of that bar? But Playboy magazine back in the day rated it the roughest bar in the U.S. It's called the Elbow Room. That's what it is. Look, Google that shit up one day. The Elbow Room. It's the roughest bar in the U.S. People would get killed there and all that stuff, because guys who didn't pull their weight on the fishing boats, the crew would get so upset that like they come back to town and have some drinks and just get in big brawls and fights, and like that guy would not go back on that fishing boat again, And so the skipper's telling me this. He's like, Kev, I don't want this happening to you. And I'm like, John, I promise.
Talk about a first day pep talk, Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, right? And I just said, I promise you, I will not let you down. And so he gave me the shot, and we went up there. And once we got up there, Jeremy, man, I was like, he was right. I had not a clue, man, because it was ridiculous. It was, I mean, insane wet.
Describe the scene a little bit.
I mean, because we worked up in Alaska's Bering Sea, and we're a typical day is it's just wet, rainy, miserable, wet, cold weather. You're dealing with 20, 30-foot waves. This boat is just rocking all around. I mean, half your job is just learning to stay on your feet and do your dang job while this boat's moving all around underneath you. And we would work anywhere from 24 to 36 hours straight.
Jeez.
You sleep for 6 hours and get up and do it again. And on a good trip, we could fill that boat in about 2 weeks. On a bad trip, I'd been out at sea working under those kind of conditions, working those kind of hours for up to 2 months before, where we finally just had to pack it up and go into town, even though we weren't full, because we were running out of food and fuel. And so, but that was
how many people are on the boat?
Typically, depending on which boat you go on, there's going to be, say, 6 to 8 guys. And if you're doing processing too, you're going to have another 6 to 8 guys if you're on a boat that does processing too. And so yeah, between 6 to 16 guys, because you got the skipper, the engineer, you got a cook who usually doubles and works on deck too and stuff. And so
what was the toughest part about that job? Seems like everything's pretty hard.
The weather and just trying to stay safe and stay on the boat in some cases, because the weather's so crazy. You're getting hit with rogue waves. And in fact, 95, that was the year that I got hit and just threw me across the boat. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm done. You've saved up enough money. And so,
what happened at that time?
We were in one heck of a storm, and I was out when, and really, when you get in a storm like that, I mean, at least for me, I won't speak for the other guys, but I mean, for me, I was really, it's scary. And the way that I would deal with it is I wouldn't look out at the horizon. I wouldn't look out at the water. I would just concentrate on my job, getting the catch onto the boat, and let the skipper do that up in the wheelhouse. And on that night, we got hit, and I'm just working away, and he's all of a sudden over the loud hitter. He's like, Kevin, duck. And before I could even react, we got hit broadside with this huge wall of water, and it picked me up like I was nothing, hurled me face first all the way across the boat into the railing. In fact, I broke my fall by hitting my face against the railing. That's what this scar on my chin is from. My front teeth got knocked out there. But if it would have thrown me a couple inches higher, that would have been it.
You're dead. Oh yeah.
And
when you were there, did anyone get thrown overboard?
Yes. Yeah. A couple of guys got thrown overboard while I was up there, and nobody on any of the boats that I was on died. We were able to get them off.
Really?
It wasn't
wow.
really bad storm that it happened, so that was fortunate. You got a life ring to them, but it was regular occurrence that people died. And because the skippers can all talk to each other on the radios up there and stuff, you heard about it immediately, about man overboard, man overboard. You heard, I mean, you knew when it happened. Everybody in the fleet knew that it happened, and then a guy got lost.
Jeez. So, yeah, one a little bit higher and you're thrown overboard and no one's getting you.
Yeah. When you're in a storm like that, because the captain can't get the boat turned around in time to save you when you're in a storm. It's a different thing when you're not in such a nasty storm, but when you're in a nasty storm like that, they're not getting that boat turned around in time to save you. And so
you quit at the time. You're like, that's like a wake up call.
That was my wake-up call. And the thing is, like, I didn't quit. Even like my tooth, when it busted out at an angle. It exposed the nerve, and the tooth was it was pointy, and so it cut my tongue too, and it kept cutting my tongue. And I got so fed up with it, because the skipper was like, well, Kev, we can just take you to port. I'm like, no, because that meant shutting down the whole dang fishing operation for everybody. And I'm like, I don't want to be the guy that makes them cut into port for like 2 days travel each way and stuff. I was like, I'll just finish out the contract. I filed my tooth flat. I went down to the engine room and got one of those, like, I don't know, big files, and I just filed the tooth flat so it would stop cutting my tongue. And then I would put some, I can't remember what it was called, Cabot or something like that. You put on your tooth because the air.
If you have an exposed nerve like that, it is excruciating.
Oh yeah, it hurts like hell. It hurts like
excruciating.
Yeah.
So how did you even get through? You're just like, yeah, I'll walk it off. I mean, that's insane, Kevin.
Well, because I guess at that point, that was the working up in Alaska for the 7 years I did was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. But it also, it was kind of like this badge of honor too, Jeremy. It was this badge of honor of look at me, man. Look, and my dad, from the time I was little, he had always told me, he's like, Kevin, the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. That was his experience. That was the best advice he knew to give me. And I remember how many times I thought, man, Dad, if you could see me now, I know you'd be proud. And so there was all of that played into it right up until the point when I almost died. And I'm like, okay, this is enough. But even at that, I didn't want to let down the skipper. I didn't want to let down my crew members. I didn't want to be the guy who shut down the whole doggone operation. That's a lot of money for everybody, including the fishing company, And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I was like, I'll just finish this out. I'll finish this contract. Then I'm off the boat. And that's exactly what happened. I finished the contract, got off the boat, and never went back. And so, but I never lost all the lessons either.
Amazing story. Thank you. There's so many lessons in that. I totally appreciate your time, everything you do for everyone else and myself. Everyone should, they can reach out to you on Facebook. They can email you. I don't know if you want to give your email, but they could check out tribeforleaders.com. And if you're an entrepreneur, founder, who else would be perfect for Tribe for Leaders?
Yeah, I mean, established entrepreneurs, CEOs, that's the big thing. And who are also just giving, generous, lead with helping hand, people of integrity. Those are the kind of people that are right fit for Tribe for Leaders. And if what I shared here resonates with you, if you feel like you would not only benefit from being a part of it, but also have a lot to contribute as well, I'd be happy to have a conversation. Yeah, if
you want to get on the boat with someone for Tribe for Leaders who's willing to file his tooth down with an exposed nerve and still make sure people stay afloat and the fleet is out, that's who you want.
There you go.
So, Kevin, I totally appreciate you. Everyone check out tribeforleaders.com and we'll see you on the other side. So thanks, Kevin.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeremy.